Hi guys, today I'm going to discuss rule number 14, which talks about head-on situation. And although this rule is very simple, there are some finer points for you to understand when you are trying to comprehend this rule. So I'll just discuss the finer points that you should make a note of. So I will not, of course, read out the rule to you. The A, B, C of the rule you already know. I'll just highlight the finer points because you can you can read the rule yourself. There's no point to that. So just make sure that you have the rule in front of you, and I will focus on the important bits and pieces of this rule so that you can highlight it in your own book. All right. So the first important bit is that you have to understand is that this rule number 14, which is a head-on situation, applies only to power-driven vessels. That is clearly mentioned in rule 14 part A. Alright, so you have to, that is the one thing you have to highlight first. It only applies to power driven vessels, not to any other vessels. Alright, now initially when this rule was written, there was some kind of complication that what do you mean when you say that the vessel is head on or where the vessel is end on. So that was gradually replaced to the phrase that when the two vessels are meeting on reciprocal or nearly reciprocal courses. Okay, so that phrase was replaced because it was difficult to comprehend what do you mean by when the two vessels are head on or end on from one another. So that's why they introduced a more measurable term where you can see your course and the course of the other vessel, and then you can see whether they are reciprocal or nearly reciprocal. Now what do we mean by reciprocal? Of course, if you are on a course of 000 and the other vessel is on a course of 180, that is reciprocal courses. Right? If you are on a course of 030 and the other vessel is on a course of 210, you are on reciprocal courses. So these are simple reciprocal courses when you are 180 degrees opposite to each other. Your courses are 180 degrees. There's a difference of 180 degrees. When we say nearly reciprocal courses, what do we mean by that? So in the olden rules, it was 6 degrees on either side of your bow. 6 degrees. It used to be say that if you are 6 degrees on either side, then it is considered to be emitting end on when the phrase end on was there. Also, that was a bit vague because the due consideration had to be given to the yawing of the vessel and the effect of strong currents, winds, tides on both the vessels. Sometimes strong currents, wind, tide affects your vessel more than the other vessel, or vice versa. It could be affecting the other vessel more than your vessel. So that kind of leeway has to be given. So what they did was they decided that let's make it more explanatory, and they said you should be able to see the masthead light as well as both the side lights. All right, so when you can see that at when during the day you can see the ahead or nearly ahead, and by night you can see the masthead lights of the other in a line or nearly in a line, and or both side lights. So they say and or both side lights. So you can see masthead lights and side lights, or masthead lights or both side lights. But the important bit here is that you have to see both the side lights. That is one important thing you have to make a note of. Because the side lights have also been constructed or positioned in the vessel in such a way that you can see the side lights when the vessel is either exactly on your bow or exactly on your heading, or 2 degrees on either side of your bow. So that's why they made it more explanatory by saying that you should consider yourself in a head-on situation with the other vessel when you can see both the side lights, not when you can see one side light. If you can see one side light, that's more like a crossing situation. You should be able to see both the side lights. You also have to remember that the course we are talking about, when we talk about head-on courses, end-on courses, reciprocal courses, we are talking about the heading of the vessel, not course made good. This is the other final point you have to remember. So you are talking about the heading of the vessel, not the course that it is making good in the prevailing circumstances, depending on the tide, current, and wind and other effects. Then the other thing you have to remember is when you will see the other vessel fine on your starboard bow, you may be tempted to alter course to port, and so will the other vessel. Both of you will be tempted to alter course to port because you can see it fine on the starboard bow or slightly on your starboard bow, and the temptation is for you to just alter course to port and create that space with the other vessel. Don't fall for that temptation, right? You should make a broad alteration of course to starboard and clear your vessel of the other vessel and make it very clear to the other vessel as well what you are planning to do, and same should be the action of the other vessel as well. So if you make it clear to the other vessel will follow suit as well. So in your oral examination, if the surveyor tries to tempt you by putting the other vessel fine on your starboard bow or slightly on your starboard bow, that you feel tempted to go to port and he's tempting you to go to port, don't do that. Make a broad alteration, of course, to starboard, unless of course if you go to starboard you're running into another danger, but don't fall for that temptation. Because you have to give allowance for the other vessels yawing and movement under prevailing circumstances and conditions. So although you may see it on fine on your starboard bow, it may be on a head-on course. So at night especially, judge it based on the fact that you can see both the side lights, but during the day you should be able to see whether you are nearly ahead or ahead, and that means that you give it some allowance and because of the yawing effect of the vessel. Alright, so these were some of the important points. Like I said, make sure that you talk about the heading, not the course made good. This rule applies to only power driven vessels, and this phrase was end on was replaced by reciprocal or nearly reciprocal courses. What does that mean? You should be able to see both side lights. What does that mean? Because side lights you can see 2 degrees on either side of the bow. That's how the side lights have been constructed. When I say side lights have been constructed, means the matting or the protective screen is constructed in such a way that if the vessel is nearly ahead or 2 degrees on either side of your bow, you can still see both the side lights. Alright, so that's pretty much it regarding rule 14. It's a short rule, it's a small rule, it's a relatively easier rule to understand, but there are some finer points which I thought I'll put across to you guys who are especially as members. And finally, the last part of the rule says, if you are in doubt, assume that you are in a head-on situation and act accordingly. That's pretty self-explanatory, something that I've talked about already. This will especially be the case if you see the other vessel not exactly on the reciprocal course, but on finer on either your port or starboard bow. So act accordingly, assume that it's a head-on situation, and just make a broad alteration, of course. Make your intention apparently known to the other vessel. Alright, so let me know what you thought about this video, whether it was beneficial or not, and I'll keep putting these important points forward for you guys as mariners. Also, more videos coming on ship stability soon.